Mr. Speaker, how fitting it is to end the year in this parliament on one of the National Party's great ideological crusades that's turned sour. Because that's what this is. Because the National Party were warned. They were warned in the 1990s when they went down the private prison pathway, and the Labor government had to come in and wind that back. And they go down that pathway again in this government, Mr. Speaker, solely for ideological reasons. Let's be absolutely crystal clear. The taking away of someone's liberty is a responsibility of the state. It should be held by the state as a responsibility to manage that in accordance with the kind of norms and rules that the public of New Zealand would expect. And when a private operator is brought into this, they bring with them the profit motive. That's the point of the operation of a company like Serco. And they will cut corners. We knew that from day one. The government was warned. Staffing levels will be cut, and they were. And as Kelvin Davis has pointed out, and I want to pay tribute to Kelvin Davis, who has led this campaign fantastically well, highlighting what has happened in Mount Eden. As Kelvin Davis pointed out, the moment those staffing levels went down, the pressure goes on the staff, the trouble rises, and we have seen the appalling situation of violence within Mount Eden, of the contraband that's come into Mount Eden. So the government was warned about this, and they proceeded anyway, Mr. Speaker. But look at the contract that was signed by Judith Collins, who stood there and said, Serco has a strong track record in managing prison. I'm confident the company will bring high standards of professionalism, safety, rehabilitation and security expected by the government to Mount Eden. Well, they came with their track record from the UK, in fact, and that's what happened. That's what happened at Mount Eden, was what had happened in the UK. Poor performance, and the taxpayers of New Zealand and the people of New Zealand ripped off. Well, Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, what we say is, what kind of contract is it that the government has signed? The government signed up to a contract that means the taxpayer will be paying for another 14 months of Serco doing nothing. 14 months more payment to Serco for their poor performance. What economic geniuses on the other side of the House who sign up to contracts, and time after time the government gets done in by commercial operators, be it Sky City, be it TY Point, be it Chorus, be it Warner Brothers. Time after time, this government gets done over in commercial negotiations. So here they are saying, we've got a private provider who's hopeless, who's not doing the job, but we're going to pay them for another 14 months. They are useless. They are useless at negotiating commercial contracts, and they come into this House and lecture every other party. Well, this is the party that's lost millions and millions of dollars for New Zealanders because of their blind ideological approach to public services. Mr. Speaker, they have put ideology before public safety. They have put ideology before the rehabilitation of prisoners. That's what this government has done. And you know what makes it worse, Mr. Speaker, is that Mount Eden, they might have lost the contract, Serco, but they've still got the contract for Wirri. They've still got a 25-year contract there. It's like taking a box of matches off a pyromaniac and saying, but you can keep the big can of petrol for 25 years and pour that around the place, because that's what they've done by extending the contract at Wirri, Mr. Speaker. And now Judith Collins is back in charge. The very person, Countess Homogenised, arrives on her white horse and says, I'm back. I created this shambles and I'm back. Well, here's my challenge to Judith Collins. Today, John Key has said that Serco could re-tender for the contract in 2017. That's what he said this afternoon. My challenge to the National Party is, for once, listen. Look at the evidence, realise what you've done and step away from this ideological approach. Reassure New Zealanders that the correctional system is safe, that it is protecting New Zealanders and actually doing what it is meant to do to rehabilitate prisoners. Because if they bring Serco back, Mr. Speaker, mark my words, this will happen again. This ideological nonsense has to stop.